All right, so we're back and ready for another deep dive. This one's taking us all the way to Egypt.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, into a case that's really captured the public's attention over there. Kind of like, you know how we were fascinated by Ted Bundy?
Oh, yeah, I see.
This is their version, but, with a definitely Egyptian spin on things. We're calling it the Tagamo'a killer case.
I like it. So we going global now.
That's right. We got these translated articles from two big Egyptian newspapers, Al Aram and Yum 7. They both cover the same story, but, like with anything.
Sure, different perspective.
At different angles, right.
Yeah.
So first things first. Who is this Tagamo'a killer?
Well, his name's Kareem, 46 years old, divorced, father of two,
Okay.
and originally from Alexandria. And get this, he's got a PhD in psychology.
Wait, a PhD, that's not exactly your typical, killer profile, is it?
Right. That's what makes this one so interesting.
Yeah.
He was like a successful English teacher, taught at a private school. But then he got fired. And next thing you know, he's popping up on TikTok.
What in learning me?
Teaching English pronunciation and even like promoting a child tracking app. It's crazy.
It's like one of those things where, you think you can spot the danger coming, but then someone like this just throws you completely off.
Yeah, he doesn't fit the mold.
Not at all.
Yeah. And I think that really taps into this fear people have. They're, the fear of the unknown,
Oh, yeah.
hidden dangers, especially in a place like Tagamo'a, which is, a wealthy area, upscale compounds, the whole bit.
It's like that feeling that no matter how safe you think you are behind those walls, security cameras, something can still slip through.
Absolutely. So, okay, now the big question is, what exactly did this guy, Karim, actually do?
Yeah, what were the crimes?
Well, we know he killed at least 3 women.
Oh, God.
And they were all, it seems, involved in sex work.
Okay.
And he lured them to his apartment in Tagamo'a. But this is where it gets really chilling.
Yeah.
This guy, he soundproofed a room
Soundproof.
specifically for these crimes.
Wow. So this was like premeditated.
Oh, definitely. We're talking a level of planning here that's pretty disturbing.
Yeah.
Yeah. He drugged them, tortured them, strangled them, even filmed the assaults and their bodies afterwards.
Ugh, that's awful. And then what, he just left them there in the apartment?
No. He disposed of the bodies, stuffed them in suitcases, and dumped them on highways in different parts of the country.
So moving the bodies to different areas, that's something you see in a lot of criminal cases, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Classic attempt to throw off the investigation, make things harder to connect.
So wait, they caught him. How?
Well, that's the interesting part. They found a body dumped on a highway in Port Said,
Okay.
and they ran the fingerprints, and boom, it led them straight back to Kareem.
Wow. So even with all that planning, he's still messed up.
Yeah. It's a reminder that sometimes, even the most, seemingly perfect crimes,
Right. Yeah.
that one little bit of forensic evidence,
Yeah.
that can be the thing that unravels the whole thing.
So they got him right there in his apartment.
They did. And what they found inside was, let's just say, it painted a pretty disturbing picture.
Oh, okay. I am definitely on the edge of my seat here. What did they find?
Well, remember how I mentioned Karim being an organized offender? Well, his apartment was like a textbook example. Restraints, weapons, and other things that were pretty unsettling.
Wow.
Given the nature of the crimes. It really felt like you were looking right into the mind of a predator.
Okay, this is all pretty intense, but we still don't know why. Why did he do it?
Right. And that's always the big question, isn't it? During the interrogation, Karim actually claimed that he couldn't remember the exact number of victims.
Seriously?
Yeah. He admitted to enjoying inflicting pain, saying that their screams, they gave him pleasure.
Oh, that's chilling. So, are we talking about a sadist here? Or was it, I don't know, the drugs he was using? You mentioned something earlier about, a unique Egyptian angle to this.
Yeah, that's what we're going to have to unpack, because this case, it's not just about this one man and what he did. It's about what it says about the society he was operating within.
Right, it's holding up a mirror to Egypt, forcing them to look at some things they might not want to see.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm hooked. Let's talk about the reaction. How did the Egyptian people react to all of this?
Well, it was huge. I mean, his face was everywhere, newspapers, TV. Everyone was talking about it. There was this mix of horror, fascination, and even a sense of shame.
Shame. Why shame?
Well, in a society where honor and reputation are so important, having someone like Karim come from their midst,
Yeah.
especially with his education and, seemingly good background,
Right.
it really shakes their sense of
It
identity.
makes you question everything, right? Could this happen anywhere? Could it happen to us?
Exactly. And that fear, That's what makes this case so unsettling for them. It's not just about the crimes themselves.
It's about what it says about them.
Exactly. It's about these hidden cracks,
Yeah.
beneath the surface of their society.
Wow. Okay, so we got this explosive public reaction. What about legally? What's going on with Kareem now?
Well, he's been arrested and charged with multiple murders.
Yeah.
His trial's set for June 2024. And let me tell you,
Yeah.
it's going to be a media frenzy.
I bet. What do you think? What kind of defense do you think he's going to use?
I don't think you can deny it, with all the evidence. But maybe his lawyers will try to play up his mental state.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe his drug use, his past. They might even try to paint him as a victim himself, to try and get a lighter sentence.
So it'll be like this battle of stories.
Totally.
The prosecution saying he's a monster and the defense trying to make him seem like just a regular guy who snapped.
Right. And the outcome of that, it's going to have a huge impact, not just on Kareem's fate,
Yeah.
but on how Egypt as a whole deals with these bigger issues that this case has brought to light.
This is a lot to process. But you're right. There's so much more to this story. Let's go deeper, maybe starting with why those victims? Why did he target women involved in sex work specifically?
Right. That's a big part of this and why it's causing such a stir. You see, in Egypt, sex work is illegal, and there's a lot of stigma around it.
I see.
Kareem probably chose these women because, to him, they were vulnerable, less likely to be missed.
So sad, right? It's like the people who are already struggling are the ones who become the most vulnerable.
Yeah, and that's why this case has hit such a nerve. It's forced people to confront not just these horrific acts, but the inequality and the prejudice that made it all possible.
Wow. It's like you're peeling back the layers of their society and showing this dark underbelly that's usually hidden.
That's a good way to put it. And sometimes it takes a case this shocking to make a whole nation confront its demons like this.
This is really giving me chills.
That's a heavy one.
Okay, so we've talked about who Kareem is, what he did, and the public reaction, but there's still so much more to unpack here.
Oh, absolutely. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
You're right. There's his psychology, the legal side of things, and even this whole question of whether understanding a killer's motives actually makes their acts any less horrifying.
Yeah, that's a big one. It really makes you think about how well we can truly know anyone.
Exactly. We'll dive deeper into all of that in our next part of this deep dive on the Tagamo'a killer. Stay tuned.
Can't wait. It's a tough reality to face,
Wait.
And then you add in the fact that Kareem was a father.
Oh, right. He had kids.
2 of them.
Yeah. And divorced, which I guess complicates things even more for the public trying to wrap their heads around this.
Absolutely. It feeds into that whole idea of, like, the monster hiding in plain sight, someone's dad, maybe for friendly neighbor.
That duality is always so disturbing in these cases.
It is. And especially in Egypt, where family and community ties are so strong.
Yeah.
It creates this huge disconnect. People start questioning their own judgment, wondering if they can trust anyone.
I can only imagine the conversations happening, the whispers, people in those fancy compounds giving each other side-eye.
Oh, for sure. And those whispers often turn into, demands for action. This case has reignited a whole debate about the death penalty there.
Whoa. So
Yeah.
Kareem's trial, it's not just about him anymore.
No, it's become a symbol, a flashpoint for this much bigger societal issue.
I see. So what are the arguments? Like, what are people saying on both sides?
Well, you have those who are saying his crimes were so brutal, so calculated,
Yeah.
that he deserves the ultimate punishment. Anything less wouldn't be justice for the victims.
And I can see that point, the need for justice, for closure. It's powerful.
It is. But then on the other side, you have those who say the death penalty is just wrong, that it's barbaric, doesn't actually prevent crime.
Great.
And you could even end up executing someone who's innocent or mentally ill.
It's a moral dilemma for sure. And Kareem's case, with all its twists and turns.
Yeah, it's become the center of it all.
It is. Okay, so let's go back to Kareem himself for a second. You mentioned earlier that he slipped up with the fingerprints. That doesn't exactly sound like the actions of, some criminal mastermind.
That's what's so perplexing about this whole thing.
Yeah.
There's the planning, the soundproof room, how he got rid of the bodies.
Right, very organized.
But then these careless mistakes, the fingerprints, the digital trail.
So was he actually clever or
Yeah.
just sloppy?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's crucial to figure out, to understand how dangerous he really was.
Yeah.
There's actually a theory that his PhD in psychology might have worked against him in a way.
Interesting. How so?
Well, think about it. He studied the human mind, criminal behavior, forensics. He might have gotten cocky, thought he was smarter than everyone else.
It's like he got lost in the theory, thought he could outsmart the reality of it.
Exactly. And that kind of arrogance, that can be a blind spot,
Yeah.
leading to those fatal errors for him and, of course, for his victims.
It's a good reminder that being intelligent doesn't mean you're wise.
No, not at all. Okay, so you said earlier that his apartment was like stepping into a predator's mind.
Yeah.
What else could you tell us about what they found?
Well, it was really chilling. They found all these cameras and recording devices.
Yeah, wow.
Remember, he filmed the assaults. It wasn't just about the violence. It was about documenting it. Like he was creating this awful collection.
It's almost like he wanted to relive it, savor that power he had.
Exactly. Turning these horrific acts into some kind of, I don't know, twisted entertainment.
It's a deeply disturbing thought. It goes beyond just causing pain. It's about the control, the documentation.
Like he's the director of his own horrible show.
That's a powerful way to put it. And that control aspect, that's crucial to understanding his psychology. He wasn't just a killer.
Right.
He was in charge of the whole narrative, you know.
That adds a whole other level of creepiness to it.
Yeah, it does. Now, aside from all the physical stuff, the recordings, the weapons, did they find anything about his mental state, like, you know, in the apartment?
Oh, they did. One of the most unsettling things was this diary they found.
Oh, wow. What was in it?
Full of his thoughts, fantasies, justifications for what he did. He wrote about hating women, needing to punish them, like he'd convinced himself that they were all deceitful and manipulative, deserving of it.
Creating his own twisted ideology.
Exactly. Dehumanizing his victims to make himself feel less guilty.
It's sadly something we see in cases like this. Violence against women.
Yeah.
Shifting the blame, making it about the victims instead of facing their own actions.
It's a scary reminder of how much misogyny is still out there and how it can fuel this kind of violence.
You're right. This isn't just about one man. It's about the bigger picture, the society that allowed this to happen.
And the courage it takes for people to confront those hard truths so maybe things can change.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you mentioned before that Kareem blamed his divorce. What was his relationship history like?
Well, his ex-wife, she described him as controlling, emotionally abusive.
Oh, no.
She said she left him after years of manipulation and, you know, just mental torment. She even reported him to the police once for making threats, but nothing ever came of it.
It makes you wonder if this was like a gradual escalation.
Yeah.
If maybe there were chances to stop it before it went this far.
The question a lot of people are asking, the investigators, those who knew him, were there signs they missed? Could this have been prevented?
And for his ex-wife, knowing what he did, the psychological toll must be immense.
It's heartbreaking.
Yep.
And it really highlights how important it is to take all forms of abuse seriously,
Yeah.
to believe survivors and offer them support.
Okay, so thinking about Kareem's social media presence.
Oh, yeah, the TikToks.
It's strange, right? Teaching English, promoting that child tracking app, almost like he was creating this image of himself as a, helpful, educated guy, maybe even family-oriented.
It's classic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Building this facade online that's completely opposite of who they really are.
A reminder that you can't always trust what you see online.
Right. You got to be careful, question motives, and be wary of anyone who seems too good to be true.
So this online persona on one hand and this dark secret on the other.
It's like a double life, a real Jekyll and Hyde situation.
And that's what makes this case so intriguing and so disturbing.
It really does. It makes you question how well we can ever truly know the people around us.
Because evil can wear so many masks.
And learning to recognize those masks, those subtle signs, that's so important to protect ourselves and the people we care about.
Absolutely. All right, so we were talking about Kareem's choice of victims.
Yeah.
How he targeted women involved in sex work and how that reflects on their vulnerability in Egyptian society.
Right.
But there's something else that Alaram mentioned that's even more disturbing. They found evidence that he was specifically looking for women who looked like his ex-wife.
Oh, wow. That adds a whole new dimension to his motives, doesn't it? It suggests that this wasn't just random violence.
Right.
There was this deeper rage, a personal vendetta, maybe?
Like he was taking out his anger with his ex on these other women.
It's a very disturbing possibility. It shows how dangerous unchecked anger can be, how unresolved trauma can manifest in these horrific ways.
Yeah. It makes you think about how important it is to deal with those issues, to get help if you need it, before they turn into something destructive.
Absolutely. Recognizing those warning signs in yourself and taking steps to heal, to move on in a healthy way.
So we have this picture of Kareem driven by anger, needing control, justifying his actions with this warped ideology.
Right.
But Yum7 adds another layer to this. They said they found evidence of a gambling addiction, that he was in serious debt.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Could financial pressure have played a role here?
Oh, absolutely. Desperation can be a powerful motivator.
Yeah.
It's possible that his gambling debts pushed him to a point where he felt like he had no other options.
So we're adding financial strain on top of everything else?
It's like this pressure cooker situation.
Yeah.
All these factors building up, the anger, the resentment, the money problems, until something snaps.
A reminder that even in cases that seem straightforward at first, there are often these hidden complexities.
Right. And to really understand the nature of evil, you need to look at all those layers, all the things that contribute to someone's actions.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle where every piece makes the picture a little more disturbing.
That's a good analogy. And in Kareem's case, there's still a lot of pieces missing.
Yeah.
A lot we don't know yet.
One thing that stood out to me in both articles was how they described Kareem's online activity. They mentioned he was part of these online forums all about true crime, talking about serial killers and stuff.
Oh, that's interesting. Was he, like, researching, or was it more about connecting with others?
Right. Was he learning from them, refining his own methods? Or was it something deeper, like a fascination with the darkness, a need to be around people who understood him?
It's a chilling thought. It makes you think about how the internet can be a place where people like him can find each other, normalize their behavior, maybe even get inspiration for their crimes.
Yeah. It's a tricky issue, balancing free speech with protecting people from harm, making sure those online spaces don't become breeding grounds for violence.
It's a big challenge for law enforcement and society in general.
Especially as the lines between the real world and the online world get blurrier.
Yeah. It's almost like the monsters we're afraid of might actually be right there in our devices.
It's a scary thought. You know, reading these reports, I noticed something that was missing. Information about the victims. Their names are there, but their stories, their lives, it's like they're just statistics overshadowed by Kareem's actions.
Yeah, that happens a lot in true crime, unfortunately. The focus shifts to the killer, the sensationalism, and the victims become almost invisible.
It's a reminder that we need to remember them, their humanity, the loss their families are going through.
Absolutely. We can't let these cases become just entertainment, ignoring the real human cost.
It's about finding that balance, you know, being fascinated by the darkness, but also acknowledging the suffering it causes.
And remembering that justice isn't just about punishing the guilty.
Right.
It's also about remembering the victims, honoring them, and working towards a future where these things happen less.
Throughout this whole deep dive, I keep thinking about Kareem's mental state.
Yeah.
You said he might have a personality disorder, but both Alaram and Yom7 kind of avoided going too deep into that.
That's interesting. It makes you wonder if there's a stigma around mental health there. Like, maybe admitting that it played a role is seen as making excuses for him.
Right, like it somehow lessens his responsibility.
Which is a dangerous way of thinking.
Yeah.
Mental illness is not an excuse for violence, but it can be a factor.
Yeah.
And understanding those factors is important for prevention, for helping people who are struggling.
We need to be more open about mental health, encourage people to get help.
Absolutely. It should be seen as a strength, taking care of yourself.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Societal context, Kareem's psychology, the legal aspects, and the ethical questions. But both Alaram and Yom7 brought up another point, the role of technology in all of this.
Right. That's a big one. And not just for Egypt.
Yeah.
Kareem used technology for everything. Luring his victims, recording his crimes, covering his tracks.
It shows how technology can be used for good or for bad.
Double-edged sword, for sure.
And as technology keeps advancing, we have to be aware of the risks and figure out how to protect people without limiting our freedoms.
It's a balancing act.
Yeah.
But it's crucial to figure out, especially as the digital world becomes more and more a part of our lives.
And in the end, technology is just a tool.
Right.
It's the human heart, the choices we make that determine whether it's used for good or evil.
And that's what makes this case, the Tagamo'a killer, so captivating and so unsettling.
It is.
It makes you think about the human condition, our potential for both good and bad.
That struggle between light and darkness is always there.
You know, both Alaram and Yum7 mentioned the impact of these crimes on the Tagamo'a community.
Oh, yeah, that wealthy area.
A place known for its affluence, its security.
Right.
And now it's associated with this horror, this realization that evil can find you anywhere.
Like their sense of safety was shattered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A loss of innocence that can be incredibly difficult to recover from.
It makes you realize that no one is truly immune to the darkness.
And that feeling of unease, that anxiety, it can last for a long time, even after the case is closed.
The ripple effects of crime are far-reaching, affecting not just the direct victims,
But their families, communities, even society as a whole.
it's not enough to just deal with the crime itself.
No, we have to look at the root causes, the inequalities, the cultural norms, the psychological factors.
To create a world where everyone feels safe, valued, and where respect for life is the priority.
It's a tall order, but it's what we should be striving for. A world we should all be working towards, for sure. You know, both Al-Aram and Yum7 pointed out this interesting thing about Kareem. Despite all his meticulous planning,
Right.
he made a pretty big mistake that led to his capture.
You mean besides the fingerprints?
Yeah. When he bought those suitcases,
Uh-huh.
he used his real name and contact info.
Are you serious with all that planning? It's almost funny in a really dark way.
It is, kind of. It makes you wonder, was he overconfident? Did he subconsciously want to get caught?
Like he was leaving a trail on purpose.
It's a fascinating psychological question. I'm
Mhm.
sure experts will be debating that for years.
Okay, so his trial's coming up. You said it's going to be a huge media event, a big moment in the death penalty debate.
Absolutely. It's going to be intense.
What do you think the main arguments will be? Like, what will each side focus on?
Well, the prosecution will probably hammer home the brutality of the crimes, the planning, the lack of remorse.
Yeah.
They'll paint him as a monster, a danger to society, and say that only the death penalty is a fitting punishment.
And the defense?
They'll probably try to humanize him, show him as a flawed person who made terrible choices, but not inherently evil.
Okay.
They might focus on his mental state, his drug use, his past, trying to get the jury to sympathize with him.
So it'll be a battle of narratives trying to influence how the jury sees him.
Exactly. And the outcome will have a huge impact, not just for Kareem, but for how Egypt deals with these issues in the future.
It's clear this case has really captured the public's attention.
Oh, absolutely.
Like everyone is trying to understand it, how something like this could happen.
True crime often does that. You know, it reflects our anxieties, our fears.
Yeah.
I think in this case, what's so unsettling for Egyptians is that it disrupts their sense of order, of how things should be.
You said before that family and community ties are strong there.
Yeah.
And here you have this educated guy, seemingly from a good background, doing these horrible things.
Right. It completely clashes with their expectations, their worldview.
It makes you realize that evil can hide anywhere.
And recognizing those signs, the subtle clues, that's so important for protecting ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. As we wrap up this deep dive, the question that keeps coming back to me is, what can we learn from all of this? How can we prevent something like this from happening again?
It's a question we should all be asking ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
How do we stop the darkness before it takes over?
It's a tough one, but I think there are some things we can take away from this case.
Yeah, like what?
Well, being aware, for one. We need to pay attention to the warning signs, the red flags.
The controlling behavior, the abuse, the threats.
Don't ignore those things. If you see them, speak up, get help.
We need to make it okay for people to seek help for mental health issues without shame.
And challenge the things in society that contribute to violence, like misogyny, the stigma around mental health.
Create a world where respect for life is the foundation, where empathy and compassion are valued.
It's easy to get lost in the darkness when you're looking at these true crime cases.
Yeah.
But there's also light out there. People fighting for justice, helping others, making the world a better place.
You're right. For every act of darkness, there are countless acts of kindness and courage.
It's those stories, those glimmers of hope that we need to hold on to.
Absolutely. A reminder that even in the face of evil, the human spirit can overcome and love can win out in the end.
Well said. And that's a wrap on this episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep the hope alive.